Our opening overture was that lovely Torelli Christmas concerto, and I hope in the midst of that you could hear sort of the edge of freezing on some of those sharply pointed notes, and then the frivolity and joy and lightness of the season as well. I have a lovely PowerPoint that might advance about a couple of frames now so we can see Mr. Torelli just briefly. There he is, good. And the beautiful Concerto Grossi. When it says Concerto Grossi, gross, a lot, a big, which means more than one person on the solo lines. And so we had both Christy and Rick as concertists. Our next concerto, just down the road a little bit, is even grosser. We have three soloists. There's the cello and the two violins that make up the grosso part, the concerti section of the orchestra, to tell that story. And on our next slide, you'll even see all those different movements that flew by so very quickly. If that was a Beethoven symphony, it lasts about 2 hours. But for a Torelli concerto, at about 90 seconds of movement, it goes by really, really quickly. I want to greet everyone and thank you so much for being with us this afternoon for Roanoque Baroque's second performance of the year and of ever, and especially to welcome the Roanoque Baroque Chamber Choir, which sits behind me and is making their debut performances this weekend. We just formed this fall for the very purposes of this program, and did a delightful job Friday evening at the Taubman Museum and last night at First Presbyterian Church, and then their grand finale of the first weekend is today, so a delight to have them in the midst of Roanoke's Baroque musical family. I also want to greet all those people that are online through our live stream from YouTube. Last time we were here at St. John, our YouTube audience exceeded our in-person audience, so that was really wonderful to have all you out there. Hello, wherever you are. I'm glad you could come. We're going to turn at this point to a wonderful piece that brings our choir on board. This is a beautiful setting of Mary's song, the Magnificat. We can get the next slide going to see the composers, which is a curious way to frame this, of this Magnificat. Mary, of course, responded to the words of the angel Gabriel, the invitation to bear Jesus, with the most ecstatic and beautiful song in the Bible, probably. Highly crafted along the trajectory of songs. If you recall, Hannah wrote a song very similar to this in another response to God's calling for children. And it really comes even out of the Psalms. Development, you can't call them covers of each other, but you can call them step-by-step developments of this beautiful song. A response that says, my soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit exults in God my Savior. That's the first movement, so there's a lot of joy there. And then the second and third movements are all about the dichotomy of what this means for us, for the world, that the humble will be raised, and the powerful will be put down, and the hungry will be fed, and the rich will be sent away empty. And you can hear the composer changing the mood back and forth between those two ideas in the text, but only very briefly, because the composer happens to like sending people away and putting them down a lot better than lifting them up and feeding them. So a lot of the music is edgy and powerful, and just every now and then there's a little expression of, just a little moment in it. But we have two composers up because we don't really know who wrote this piece. The two composers are Francisco Durante, who was the teacher of Giovanni Pergolesi. And Pergolesi lived only 26 years in the midst of Durante's life. So what this piece is, perhaps, is an example of the student copying out the work of the teacher, because that's how they learned. They learned by copying each other's work, so that literally the language of the music and the master musician came up through their arm into their brain, and they could do this. All the composers learned to write this way by copying the previous generations. So it might be that, because we have an original copy, an autographed copy of this work in the hand of Pergolesi. But we also have an autographed copy in the hand of Durante. So perhaps it was the teacher who needed to use this music sometime later and remembered his student's composition and rewrote it out for that church performance that day. Or maybe it was that he wrote it before. So we don't know, but it's a beautiful Magnificat in any case. Features these movements, the first, the exaltation, the second and third, the responses in dealing with the dichotomies of humanity's situation. The fourth and fifth movement are the promises that God made in this gesture. First to Israel, to be carried on and to be sustained, and then to Abraham for all his generations to go forward. And then finally, my favorite movement of the whole piece, and I hope it's yours as well, is Sicut erat in principio. As it was in the beginning, it will be forever. And the reason it's terribly fun is because he uses the exact same melodies as he does in the first movement. As it was in the beginning, It will be forever. So he's kind of expecting his music perhaps to live forever. And he uses the same melodies and same music that he used in the first movement. But you have to remember it. So here's your melodic quiz. Da da dim da 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 dee dum da da da. If you remember that melody from the first movement, you'll smile in the last movement. Francesco or Giovanni's setting of Mary's song, the Magnificat. And we can change the slide for that. Returning to the world of the Italian Christmas concerto, this next piece written by Arcangelo Corelli, his Christmas concerto, written on the night of Christmas, or written for the night of Christmas. So many stories to tell about this wonderful piece. It is a triple concerto, hence a concerto grosso, for these three instruments that are now out front. Wonderful solos for the cello and both of the violin players as they have their own voice and their own moment in the mix. This was written at the request of his donor, who happened to be a cardinal in the Catholic Church, Cardinal Ottobene, and it would have been written for his palace at the time of Christmas. And I don't want you to necessarily just listen to this as a piece of concert music, but put it in your own home. Or better yet, put it in a ducal palace in Rome or in Venice or Florence, and see the tapestries on the wall. And know that it was to be performed in the midst of a Christmas familial celebration. Perhaps, cousin Francesca was coming over with the plum pudding, and maybe Uncle Giovanni was going to bring the family Bible and read the Christmas story at some point in the middle of it. And then there's the smells wafting from the kitchen. There are cookies afterwards, and you may smell those now. The roasted duck or the boar's head might be coming in just now. And you're fully enjoying the music and fully engaging your senses, all of them, in this moment of Christmastide and telling this story. And part of our story today in telling these concerti and this music is the title of our ensemble, Roanoque Baroque. And Baroque, of course, means fancy, gilded, highly decorative. And all this music, obviously, is that. But the instruments themselves have their own character and their own personalities. And we have shifted from our last concert, if you were with us, to this concert, to a different kind of playing because of some of the instruments that we've chosen to use. In this concert, all of our upper strings are playing with those beautiful bows. You can see them. The angel has them on the front of the cover of the program. They're a little different, and feel free to talk to the players afterwards about that if you'd like. Almost all of them like them. Not all of them, but almost all. They're 18th century bows, and they have a different shape, a different curvature, and they're much lighter, and they're much more buoyant, so they can do all those digga-digga-digga-digga-digga things with a great deal more ease, kind of you're lifting a little lighter weight as you play. They also have a lighter sound and a different character of sound at times. Our two soloists are also playing on originally designed and copies of Baroque violins, and they're slightly shorter by the neck. They have a different kind of string. They don't have steel strings. They have, I hope there are no really ardent PETA members with us today. They are gut strings that come from nature, and they tune differently. If you might have noticed Christy tuning delicately there in the middle of the Magnificat, because they don't quite stay as sturdy as steel. So they have to be adapted now and then. The necks are a little bit lower, and very important to violin players, they don't have a chin rest. So they have to support and sustain their own instrument the whole way through. And they just play differently, and so we get a different ambiance of sound around this Baroque styling of the music, and it's a lot of fun to discover that. So immerse yourself in Corelli's Concerto for Christmas Night. Be a part of a Christmas celebration and discover what that might feel like in the midst. Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was the governor of Syria. So everyone went to their own town to register. Joseph also went up from Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the city of David, because he was of the line and house of David. He went to register with Mary, who was promised to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the baby was born, and she gave birth to her first son, wrapped him in cloths and laid him in a manger, because there was no guest room available for them. At that time, there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, watching their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said, "Do not be afraid, for I bring you good news with great joy for all people. For to you this day in the city of David in Bethlehem is born a Savior, the Messiah, the Lord. And this shall be a sign to you. You will find him wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly, a multitude of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and peace to those on whom his favor rests." And when the angels had departed and gone back to heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, what the Lord has told us about." And they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby wrapped in cloths, just as they were told. When they had seen him, they went and shared the news of what they had heard. And all who heard the shepherds were amazed at what they told them. But Mary treasured all these things in her heart and pondered them. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for what they had seen and heard, which were just as they had been told. One of the wonderful things about the Baroque era is that most of the music was written while most of the people were alive in that day. Bach did Bach. Telemann did Telemann. Telemann didn't do Kuhnau. He didn't do Stolzer. He didn't even do Monteverdi. He did Bach because he wrote the music fresh for that day. Don't let the pastors hear this, but the choir director there was expected to write new music for every Sunday in the church year. And that wasn't just a little 2-minute anthem and a hymn. That was a 25, 30-minute cantata and 4 or 5 hymns. And not for just one parish, but for 3 or 4 different churches in the city. We don't do that anymore. It just doesn't done. But so we thought we'd take a step away from the Baroque musically, but step into that spirit and do some music of the 20th and 21st century for Christmas and share those with you. And we'd like to start that with a piece by one of the master composers of the 20th century, Ralph Vaughan Williams. Wonderful English composer who not only wrote beautiful symphonies and oratorios, he also edited the English hymnal and brought out many, many wonderful hymns, especially hymns of the Welsh and other traditions where he traveled the countryside listening to people sing their native hymns and wrote them down and compiled them and preserved them so that we have these songs today. One of those beautiful ancient melodies that he used in that book was the tune Greensleeves, or What Child Is This? Amongst our wonderful composers of the 21st century is John Rutter, English composer, seen there enjoying his composing at the piano. Love that lovely picture of John. He wrote for the most important choirs in England, all the cathedral choirs, King's College and others. Has his own wonderful choir, the Rutter Singers. Lots of recordings. You may know his music very well if you listen to the radio anywhere near Christmas time. You probably hear his settings. We'd like to share 3 of those to close this afternoon's program. Nativity Carol, The Holly and the Ivy, and, well, it's true, what sweeter music can we bring than a carol for our King?
Stay
Thank you again for joining us, whether you are out there in the nether someplace on YouTube or here in the hall. We really appreciate your being with us for this celebration in the Christmas season. A look ahead, we do have some notes about our next program coming up, not just about one season, but brilliantly about 4 seasons, perhaps the most famous Baroque piece ever. I'll maybe cede to the B minor Mass, but other than that, it's Vivaldi's 4 seasons. And we have a wonderful guest violinist coming from California, Isaac Kay, who's literally played around the world because he spent about 1.5 years on a cruise ship playing. So I know he's played in all 7 seas and near all 7 continents. Wonderful young performer who you'll just treasure to hear him discover the brilliant telling of the 4 seasons by Antonio Vivaldi. We hope you can join us for that early in February. But again, so appreciative you're here this afternoon, and a blessed Christmas to all. If you'd like to support the work of the orchestra, those baskets are at the doors, and there is a way to give online on the St. John giving site for those on YouTube. Feel free to step up and be a part of the Christmas spirit in supporting Roanoque Baroque. We'd like to turn back to the Baroque, and Baroque is a very participatory sort of event, so if you'd love to stand and sing Joy to the World with us, we'd invite you in.